Welcome to a very special episode of the Diabetech Podcast. We are live in Valencia with Jen Grieves, and I knew I had to bring Jen on the show because she was a digital nomad just like me. You know, is always traveling. You did a whole 4-month stint in Latin America, and I want to ask you all about that, especially as I'm traveling the world.
Yeah.
So it was important to have you here.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled. Thank you so much. And it's so nice to get to share these experiences with someone who knows the type 1 side of things. Yeah.
We met at an Omnipod event in Amsterdam not that long ago, and we bonded over a few things. The joy in content creation, a past in working in television, diabetes,
obviously,
and travel.
Yeah, which is what brings you here today to Valencia.
Yeah, and brings you here, because you live in Barcelona.
Yeah, exactly. And
Amazing.
It's very cool to do something in person because that never happens.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So you are on social media as Jen Greaves. Your podcast, you have Type 1-on-1, you have a YouTube channel. I'll put the links in the show notes. But today we are getting into all things, I guess, like content creation, but more so travel. I have a lot of questions for you because I've been traveling for 7 months now. I know that you did a whole stint with travel, and funny enough, the organization you went with, Remote Year, which is now went bankrupt and no longer happening. The group that I'm traveling with was going with Remote Year. Now they're just traveling on their own.
Yeah, and the stops and the destinations are all pretty similar to the paths that I was on for a good chunk, a year of my life. So it's nice to be able to jump back in and have these conversations with you about that period of my life that changed my life, but also with the lens of but wait, your insulin supplies and how did you figure this out, which I'm really excited to get into today because it's quite rare that you can have that conversation about long-term travel. And I think understandably it's a thing that so many people are incredibly daunted by because there is a lot to think about, but the rewards are, well, they're big.
They're amazing. I've been getting so many questions about what it's like traveling, and I've done my best. I have a travel Q&A. I wrote an article about it, and I knew that bringing you on this show would just be a great supplement to all of that. Yeah. And then my educator was on the podcast too. So I'm creating this little portfolio of travel. So it's great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very honored to be in the world of Diabetech and watch you work, watch you set up. It's very exciting.
Yeah, our second camera is currently on a bowl, 3 books, and a microwave tray.
We make it work. We're people with type 1 diabetes. We're very adaptable, very resourceful, and she's stunning, I have to say.
Yeah. And of course, this content, like all of mine, is not medical advice. We are not doctors. Always consult with a physician before making changes to your healthcare. Well, before we hop into travel, I want everyone to have a bit of an understanding of your background in content and TV. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I actually trained as a broadcast journalist, and I went in. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Look at this, the crossovers. It's so funny that we only met a couple of months ago, and we were like, bam, bam, bam. So I trained as a broadcast journalist, went into the world of local radio reporting, news reporting for a while, and news was amazing, but I always knew that being pushed to the limit on the hour, every hour, that's an environment I thrived in, which I think crosses over with things like travel and moving countries and all of that. But I knew I wanted to go more into sort of different areas of media, and I went into TV, and then I landed in the world of digital production. So that is kind of, I guess, my job role, digital producer, but people don't really know what that is. But it's essentially creating digital content for TV and radio shows in the UK, which is what I do, and well, some of the time. And that's been really fortuitous. It crosses over with travel. I was working for the BBC for a long time, but I went freelance to travel more. And then I started getting offered TV contracts, short-term contracts, so 2 to 3 months that were actually on location abroad. So with that, I had to figure out how to bring type 1 diabetes with me in these highly pressurized environments in countries that weren't my own for long stints of time, where you are up to the wire to get that show out of the door at 9 p.m. or whenever it's going on air. And you have to manage your type 1 diabetes around all of that. And there's not a lot of room.
It's interesting because I worked in Hollywood also. Yeah. I had these 14-hour production days at America's Got Talent, but I didn't have diabetes yet.
Oh, okay.
And I would go to Crafty all the time, get all the snacks, whatever. But I never thought about what it would be like also managing your diabetes. I mean, yeah, that'd be a lot.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So I should say I've lived with type 1 diabetes since I was 8 years old.
Okay.
So I was diagnosed as a child, and I always had that kind of adventurous spirit. At the time, I had like 6 hobbies. My parents were forever kind of taxiing me around and just like, okay. And gratefully to them, none of that stopped when I was diagnosed. So I carried on going to dance class on Monday and basketball on Tuesday and netball on Wednesday. And it wasn't a case of whether that was going to stop because of type 1 diabetes. It's going to carry on and we're going to figure it out. And I think that's the attitude that's kind of carried me through this journey now around the world and through my career as well in Teleland, which is very much that. It's long
rolling
days.
with the punches and just being okay with the fact that you're not in control of how long this day is going to take. And letting go, and it wasn't easy for me to let go, actually.
Right.
But I think that if I had diabetes and some of these even experiences traveling, those have helped me become a lot more spontaneous. Isn't the word, more like okay with just letting life happen to me.
Yes.
And I think it could have prepared me more at that time, but I guess
Well,
you can't control the order of things.
The timeline. I think that's a really interesting point. There's an acceptance. I know a lot of people with type 1, like when you see those numbers and you want them to be in range and you feel like you're trying so hard and they're not, that is so difficult. But I think the way I've grown up, I guess, in this quite scrappy way, and bear in mind as well, like no CGM data, goodness knows where my glucose levels were for a long period of my life. I do not know, but I was finger pricking as I was told to. But I think now having the data obviously makes it a lot easier, the technology. But learning to be accepting, like pricking your finger, putting it on the stick and waiting 5 seconds being like, what's this gonna say? No idea. Could be 9, could be 19. I think with that, I kind of, like to your point, became okay with just being like, well, I'll deal with that information. I'll make the decision based on what this is telling me and move forward. That's kind of how life goes as well,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Right?
Yeah. So I know that you had the travel bug for some time. Tell me about when you started feeling this urge to travel and how you actually made that happen.
Yeah. You mean the full-time travel?
Yeah.
That was sort of a lot of things colliding. I think it had always been in the back of my mind, but then I'd got into this career that was like really rewarding and fun, and I was having loads of fun, like living my life, and I moved to London like a lot of people in media do in the UK, and kind of, that was really exciting, working with bands and working on TV shows, and I sort of put that in the back of my head away, but it was always there. I'd been to Australia. I had a friend when I was 17 who'd moved out there, and I was the one that was like, go do it and see how you feel, and if you don't like it, you can come back, whereas everyone else was a bit like, don't go, So I think it had always just been in my spirit. My brothers aren't like this, I should say. But yeah, life just comes full circle. I think I'd kind of run out of excuses, and after COVID, my job fortuitously, among a lot of stuff that was not positive, was much more remote. And I was at a point in my career by then as well where I could be trusted to take contracts from wherever. It was kind of irrelevant where I was. They knew I would deliver. So I got offered a 3 or 4 month TV contract. I was freelance by then. And I was like, would you still offer this to me if I was in Latin America, for example? And yeah, by then I'd found out about this company called Remote Year, as we mentioned, and they had a 4-month program in Latin America, which was a place I'd always wanted to go. I had no idea about, but I knew like the spirit and the vibe of it. I just really was drawn to. And it was post-COVID, my work had gone online, a lot of life circumstances had changed by then, and I think I was on this ramp by then. I was pre-COVID working abroad, as I mentioned, for like 2-3 months at a time, coming back to London, enjoying coming back and seeing my friends, but always feeling like I love being away. I love being elsewhere. I love being in other countries and in the sunshine and working hard, but also like experiencing all of this. And I just ran out of reasons to say no. So off I went with Remote Year, which gave me a group, it gave me community, and it gave me a bit of structure and stability, I think, with the lens of type 1 diabetes, knowing that there was like a community leader, so someone kind of leading the group, that I'd be with a bunch of people in the same place, in the same country for a month, and then we'd all move together. There were little things like that where I think subconsciously or otherwise, you're considering it through the lens of type 1 diabetes that made me feel more comfortable.
Well, you have a community with Remote Year or organizations that bring these people together and travel, and having already experienced the diabetes community and how important and integral that was just for support, it taught me about the need of community wherever you are. And I'm not the best solo traveler. I'm not good at planning things for myself.
Yeah.
So being able to be with a group who's kind of setting up all these different events, having people you can rely on, and a city manager you can ask all these questions about, like what's a hospital you recommend?
Yeah.
Like even something like that if you really needed it, they're there for you. So it's been...
And I think as well, knowing that you're getting a more authentic experience, that's not necessarily to do with type 1, but I think it all blended in to make me ready to take off on that runway. And packing for travel for 4 months with type 1 is a whole thing. I'm sure you've got some similar experiences in terms of gathering enough supplies together. My whole carry-on case, so I had a suitcase and a carry-on case, and I had huge designs of being this really light nomad traveler. And then type 1 diabetes comes along, and it's like, no. My whole carry-on case was diabetes supplies for that 4 months.
Question about that. What was your experience with like the extra diabetes bag carry-on or medical supplies? Did you take advantage of that?
No.
Okay. Because a lot of airlines will allow you to bring an extra for free.
From a practical standpoint, to have a third case was not anything I wanted to entertain. So I had a backpack, a carry-on case, and a full case, which...
Okay, same.
Yeah. A lot of, you can say that that's a lot, but I was just like, well, I need those supplies. For me, by the time then I was on the technology and I knew how I like to do diabetes and how I feel comfortable, especially going into environments where you don't know the food, you don't know what the situation is where you're living until you get there, and being able to control certain factors and variables like having the tech and the type of insulin that I knew. Although I will say, because I extended my trip, that I ran out of all those supplies, went back on injections. There was a point I went back on finger pricks. I changed my insulin because I couldn't get Fiasp, so I went back to Nova Rapid because it was what I could buy over the counter. So did encounter a lot of stuff. I don't know if you've had any sort of supply kind of... How do you make yourself feel comfortable when you get to a new country? Do you seek out the pharmacies? Because I know it's a thing a lot of people are concerned about, being able to access emergency supplies.
Yeah, so I don't think I actively am searching, but I am, as I'm walking around, being like, oh, that's the pharmacy that I can go to. Oh, that's a hospital nearby that I can go to. And when it comes to supplies that I'm bringing for my trips, the way I've been doing my traveling a lot is like, I did a month in Mexico City, then I came back to the US, then I went to Colombia for a month, came back to the US, then I went to Brazil. I've been going back to the US between all of these months. In fact, right now I'm on like my longest stint traveling, which is 50 days.
Okay.
So what that has allowed me to do, and I realize not everyone's gonna be able to do that, I just had to be in the US for things, is that I could just go pick up my supplies when I go home. And I am getting 3 months supplies in bulk, which I'm able to do with my insurance. Not everyone in the US can do that. They can only get a month at a time, which frustrates me so much. But you can get what's called a travel override in the US, which allows you to get for an extended period of time your medication because you need it. So if you're listening, do that.
And that must be becoming more and more common, because I had to ask for longer prescriptions. I had to go and make a case, but they did allow it.
I mean, what they're going to say, you can't travel, like, it's they got to do it. So that's available to everyone. So right now I feel like I have a good amount of supplies left. Pumps wise, I'm great. CGMs wise, like if I have one fail, I'd be worried. Yeah.
It's weird.
Which I don't love.
You're like, I remember getting to the end of the 4 months and like this whole carry-on case then could suddenly fit in the palm of my hand what I had left in terms of diabetes technology, and just being like, okay.
And what my educator said on the podcast episode I did with her, she's like, you need to bring 2 times what you need. Yeah. Do I always do that? Not necessarily. Like I do bring a lot more, at least 50% more. Yeah. but I think about it almost like in how often things are going to fail. CGMs, they cover more days, but if one of those fails,
That's a lot of days.
That's a lot of days you're losing. Whereas a pump, infusion sets, they're only lasting 3 days, some 7, but 3 days, that if one fails, okay, I only lost 3 days. So like, I kind of do the math and make sure I have a long period of time, at least 2 to 3 weeks extra supplies, that I'll be okay. Worst case is if I do find that things failed, I can start thinking ahead and be like, all right, how am I going to address the situation? Am I going to start using needles, at some point in this trip? Am I going to have to go see if there's CGMs at a pharmacy nearby? Am I going to have a family member bring them to me? Or is a friend traveling to Europe where I am and I can have them bring a couple? Like, there's problem solving that can happen, but you don't want to rely on that, and you want to have that backup supply.
Yeah. I treat it very differently. Like, I would say long-term travel for me is completely different to like a weekend away. I would probably, if you're talking about something like an Omnipod, for example, I would whack a bunch in my case, like 3 maybe for a 3-day trip, just because I can throw them in there. Whereas a long-term travel game is a slightly different game to play. But there are ways. There are ways. And I think I had the perspective as well. I was on injections for 18 years. So looking at that set of like devices in my hand, my pods and my Dexcoms, I was like, okay, that is unnerving, but you've come this far. You didn't say no to the travel in the first place because of type 1 diabetes. At this point, I know enough about the countries I'm in and what's available that type 1 diabetes is not going to send me home. And I did injections for 18 years. I'll be okay.
We are resourceful people.
Yeah,
we have to be. Exactly. We're like, okay, I have 1 needle, I have 3 alcohol swabs, and 10 units of insulin. What am I going to do?
We're going to make this work.
Now, speaking of resourceful, you said you ran out of supplies while you were traveling. Tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, what you had to do.
Yeah, so I'd done the 4-month program and everyone else was kind of going home. And I had very much understood that I wanted to keep traveling for a little while. I kind of knew I was with a view to leaving the UK, like living somewhere else for the long term. So I sort of wanted to keep going essentially. And I went back to Mexico City, which is the first city that we'd been in with Remote Year.
Love Mexico City.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. And I had a contract that I knew was going to demand a lot of my time. So this balance between like traveling the world and seeing everything and doing it while maintaining a career or a job or income is a very different travel experience to just taking time off and going and seeing the world. I think there's different ways to do it, but I knew I wanted to be in the same place because I knew I would have to be in my work for a period of time. And Mexico City I'd absolutely love, but with that, because we'd already spent a month there, I knew that I could get certain supplies there over the counter. And so when I was weighing this up, it wasn't like I was going into the unknown rural, like mountainous area with no pharmacies. I knew I was going to a big city with lots of pharmacies. I knew that there were certain types of insulin and certain types of sensors there. I knew I'd probably have to give up my insulin pump. But yeah, as I said, having done it for 18 years and knowing it was temporary and being a resourceful person with type 1 diabetes, I was like, okay, I'll make this work. I'll figure it out. But it was with that lens of like, for me, it's always, do I feel safe? And the rest of it I can figure out. And I knew going to Mexico City that I'd be okay, that I would have the supplies. Not ideal, but the adventure was worth more than, having the perfect diabetes kit.
Yeah, and what's been so great, or what is so great about the programs that we went through, or what the traveling that we're doing, is that we're doing a month at a time in these places where you really have enough time to settle down, create routine, and not feel like you're running around the place, which that had always been what traveling was for me. Like, it was a vacation, whereas this is life.
Yeah.
We are living month to month in each country. Yeah. By the time you leave, you're like, oh, I just got settled. But you are feeling comfortable in a way that, like, you have your supplies. You're just living life, and you have type 1 diabetes just as you would anywhere else.
100%. And I think once you've done that for the first time, it literally becomes about booking the next ticket and opening the laptop in the new place. Maybe that's simplifying it a little bit, but I would join a gym in each place. I would find my favorite coffee shop in each place. And actually, to the work point, balancing it all is tricky, but having the structure of like, that person is expecting that thing from me on this day, I actually found quite helpful in terms of just creating some structure around the days when you are traveling long term and you're like, I can go anywhere. What shall I do today? Like, I found it quite helpful most of the time.
You had told me that with remote year, you had to get health insurance or travel insurance. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I spontaneously fell into this. I didn't plan to travel for this long with this group. I just met them and then was like, okay, I'll come. But I haven't gotten travel insurance. I have health insurance home, which is what I've been doing every month. But like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think obviously in the UK, the setup is quite different. But whenever I've gone on even a week-long holiday prior, I'd have to get specific type 1 diabetes travel insurance. So you have your bog standard, like, I'm going on holiday, I want this level of coverage, tick. It's £10 or something very, very nominal. And then you add the layer of, oh, I've got type 1 diabetes on top, and suddenly you get all these questionnaires and it's a higher fee, which makes sense. It's just another thing we have to consider. But then adding the long-termness of it was another factor, certainly in price, the different countries you're going to. But on top of that, I was traveling in August 2021. So you needed COVID coverage as well. Okay. And I could get the diabetes insurance and I could get the number of days, but I could not get the diabetes insurance and the number of days with COVID coverage on top in the same thing. So I ended up taking out two completely different policies, one that would cover me for type 1 diabetes and the other one that would cover me for COVID. And it was really expensive, like certainly way more than anyone around me would have paid. But again, it's about feeling safe and feeling covered and feeling comfortable. And that was just something I had to do. And by that point, like I was giving up my flat in London, all of these things. I was like, well, we'll find a way. Yeah. So I did, but.
Wow. Yeah. So the other day I was in Lisbon, because that's my life, and I walked by a pharmacy and I ran in, I had to get something, and then I started asking about prices of things. I was just curious, so I was like, how much is a vial of the insulin I use? Yeah. And they said, well, if you had insurance here, it'd be $0, but if you don't, we can sell it for 44 euros. But they did say they would need a prescription, but they said they'd take a US prescription, which I could, if I needed to, my doctor would help me with that. Yeah. So 44 euros versus if you don't have health insurance in America, it's $350 for that same vial of insulin. Yeah. So you might as well just get a flight anywhere but the US.
There's an argument for that.
It's crazy. And then I asked the same about needles and CGMs, and the answer to everything was very little money if you don't have health insurance. Was there anything that surprised you during your travels when you went to these pharmacies? Then again, you're from the UK, where I guess you have a different experience than I do. But did anything surprise you during your travels in that realm?
Yeah, so the health insurance that I was just speaking of, I don't know if it's because of the nature of the healthcare system in the UK, that coverage for me in my head is like, if you have to go to hospital because you've broken your leg or you get a stomach like infection or something, that health insurance is for those things. The supply stuff just wasn't in my head, maybe because of the way I had a lot of supplies to see me through in terms of things like insulin, the smaller items. But yeah, I had gone I think I'd gone online while I was in Mexico just to see what the prices of everything was. When I returned to Mexico City, once the program was over and I went off on my own, I returned to Mexico City. I already knew how much the insulin and everything was going to cost me. And I kept all the receipts, but I didn't ever claim them because it was, nominal. Okay. It was affordable, that's relative, but it wasn't hundreds of dollars for vials of insulin or anything like that.
Did you do delivery medication with Rappi? Was that in Colombia or something? Because I used Rappi too.
For insulin?
Not for insulin, but I did from a pharmacy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't ask for a prescription.
It's mad. Like, I think because I get a lot of questions about travel, understandably, and it's like, what if this goes wrong? What if this virus smashes? What if I run out? And I always say, there are people living with type 1 diabetes all over the world. So those people are somehow getting access to medication. If you have insurances and coverages and things, you will be able to find medical healthcare and clinics. And in a lot of these countries, like, I access healthcare for different reasons at different points. A lot of them nothing to do with type 1 diabetes. And I was always like incredibly amazed by like the experience. But yeah, Rappi's like a Uber Eats, but for everything, right? So my friends were getting Rappi deliveries for food. So what's the US equivalent? Is it Uber Eats?
We have a few.
Deliveroo,
yeah, Uber Eats is one of them.
Those kinds of things. But in the UK, certainly at that point, I'd only ever used them for food. Like, I want this type of food tonight, I'm going to get a pizza delivery, whatever. My friend was Rapping her weekly shop, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. She was getting like the full supermarket shop delivered, which you can get in the UK, I should add. And then, so I went on Rappi one night just to look, and there was this tab that said medication. So I clicked on it, and all these insulins listed out, and I could not believe it. I don't think I ever ordered one. I don't think I had a need to, but more for curiosity, I was like, does it have Fias? Because that's what I use. And I just saw this massive list of insulins. I don't know. It's like, wow. It's cool. So yeah, to reassure people, the availability of insulin I have found in various countries, certainly in Europe, and then my experiences in Latin America has been very like accessible.
This episode is sponsored by Omnipod. As someone with T1D and with an incredibly active lifestyle, it's important for me not to get tied up, especially with tubes on my insulin pump. I love to go swimming, lift weights, and play kickball with friends. And with Omnipod 5, I never have to worry about tubes getting in the way. Plus, not having to disconnect helps me to stay in range during all of my favorite physical activities. That includes sexy time too. See if you're eligible for a 30-day trial by visiting omnipod.com/diabetech. On there, you'll see full safety and risk information and trial terms. That's omnipod.com/diabetech. Now I want to talk about what it's like traveling with other people, but more so communicating to those people, you know, what it's like having type 1. So when you went on this trip, how soon did the fellow travelers learn about your type 1? Is it something that you were just open about from the start, or did you hold it back? How did you handle that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think it's completely personality dependent and situation dependent. Because I knew I was traveling with these people for a long time, and that I would be in situations, very active situations, is the first thing that springs to mind. Like, I'm quite adventurous, so I will try things, type 1 diabetes or not. Hiking is a good example of that, where you're put in a situation where you are much more vulnerable. You know, I've lived in cities for a very long time. Things are very, very available, but when you're halfway up a mountain, it is a different story.
And the remote year schedule, which I've also kind of been following, it was all these adventure things, kayaking, a hike up to this waterfall.
Yeah.
And sometimes these are intense hikes.
Yeah.
Like that get your blood flowing.
Yeah. And I liken it to, dating and also being freelance. I feel like I'm introducing my type 1 diabetes quite regularly in terms of the lifestyle that I lead and have done for many, many years due to these lifestyle choices I've made. And with that, and because it's part of my work as well, having the podcast and it being something in my presence on social media, I've just got more comfortable in actually really owning it. I'm very proud of the work I've done. I'm so proud of my podcast that I built from nothing. And I know it's not going to reach 1 million people, but it reaches the people that need it. And if someone asks me about it, like, I love talking about it because I'm proud of it. So I think over time, going from someone who, for example, which is a very common experience, like wouldn't look at an insulin pump, did not want to wear something on my body, to actually being really proud of what me and this diabetes gadget team have achieved in terms of going around the world. So yeah, I very consciously introduced it to this remote year group because I knew I'd be with them for 4 months and that we'd be going through a lot. And I think not even type 1 diabetes, everyone that had come there, it's a big decision, I think, to pack up your life and go away for 4 months. So everyone comes, I've found, in these types of groups with quite a willingness to be vulnerable and to talk about their lives and their experiences, very personal things quite quickly. And the way that you're thrown together with long-term travel is very exposing. So it felt like part of that bigger picture. So I was quite comfortable with it. And, you know, as you get to know more and more people, they get used to seeing what you do on a day-to-day basis, or someone might have an uncle who has type 1 or a friend who has type 1. And it was just part of the, you know, someone else is going through this thing, someone else has this medical condition.
Yeah, everyone has their quote unquote baggage, right? Like, or their quirk that you learn through these travels. And I do think it's very important when you have type 1 or something like type 1 to let people know what to do if there's an emergency, and as soon as you can, like right off the bat. The more deeper conversations about what it is, how it works can come later, but letting them know, hey, there's this glucagon or EpiPen for diabetes in my bag in the front pocket. Yeah. If anything happened and I'm like not responding, just follow the directions on it and put me on my side. Mm-hmm. And that's something I'll say pretty quickly. Yeah. It doesn't have to be to everyone. It could be to a couple people in the group that you know will be there at any point in time. And then the nice thing about just wearing diabetes tech is that it kind of is this forced conversation or conversation starter where people see it and they're like, oh, what is that? Like, or, oh, is that like a nicotine patch? I'm like, I get that all the time. I'm like, no, it's a CGM. And then like, yeah, am I repeating myself? And I'm like, oh, I'm doing this again. But it's an important conversation to have. Mm-hmm. And if you don't feel like talking about it all the time, like just be like, oh, like tell them what you got to tell them, and then just change the subject. Yeah. But super important to let people know what to do in an emergency, what a low is like. Also, I think that the group that I've traveled with, like while I do bring a lot of low snacks, I've noticed that some of them think about me when they bring snacks. Aww. I really, like I was on a hike and I had a lot of snacks given to me because I messed up and I just didn't bring enough low snacks. And I brought a lot of low snacks, but I just didn't prepare for the hike in advance. I didn't know that it was going to be as intense as it was. Right. So I didn't set my treatment differently an hour ahead. And it was just low, 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 low. I had one. And we were in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. Like we were hiking, we were like holding branches and going through all this stuff. And it was a really intense workout. It was a lot. And it was a day that I had, like, that I felt to myself, like, I wish I didn't have diabetes. And those days don't happen a lot of me, like, internalizing that. But I just was like, I'm slowing down the group, and I know they don't care, but I don't like that I'm doing that. I feel very weak right now and very vulnerable. And I just want to enjoy my hike. Yeah, and
it's beautiful, and I can't think about anything else but whether I am about to need to be airlifted off this mountain.
And I came out for a healthy hike that's going to burn lots of calories. And then I wound up eating 300 to 500 calories of snacks, which, you know, that annoys me. I'm trying to get a little toned and I can't, like on this hike. So that's the worst.
Like this hot girl walk just went out the window. Yeah, no, that vulnerability, you said it there. That's the bit when it gets into my head, because most of the time I'm like, I'll figure it out. But usually it comes if I haven't slept very well and I'm in an exposed environment that I'm not like familiar with, and I'm being physically pushed, and I am very active. I am someone who enjoys that. But when you whack on those types of diabetes days, that vulnerability is something that I still cannot get used to because it kind of smacks you around the face all of a sudden, doesn't it? And I really have to kind of talk myself around. And if you've got a low blood sugar or something on top of that, like your brain's not making sense.
You're feeling anxious, you're feeling paranoid, and then you start to like doubt yourself and be angry at yourself, and then wonder if everyone's like feeling a certain way about you, which they're not. And it's just a really internalized thing that people without diabetes just won't ever fully understand. The way I like to put it is like your worst panic attack or your worst like anxiety, if you smoked weed and had a really bad like anxiety attack, whatever that is, like there are parts of those that we're experiencing. Is there any moment from your travels that sticks out to you where others like stepped up and were there for you?
Honestly, endlessly, and strangers as much as the group. My group was phenomenal. There were 17 of us at the beginning, and I just feel like it was the perfect bunch of people at the perfect time, and like it changed my life. And I actually continued traveling solo after that trip for a number of months, and the kindness of certain strangers along the way, that really sticks to me. And sometimes it was a random thing, like I got on a boat to an island in the middle of Nicaragua to go hiking, and then like, you know, someone was like, oh, my mum lives this way, I'm going to drop by her house, but do you want to lift because it's right by, you know, and you make assessments about whether that's a good thing to do or not, but like that kind of thing. But then I remember being in Costa Rica, and I got to a hotel, and normally I check when I'm booking it whether there's a fridge in the room. And for whatever reason, there was no fridge in my room, which was okay. I was there for one night. And I just went downstairs and I had a chat, and I was like, do you have a kitchen fridge where I can put these supplies? And I was like, but they are medicine, like I need them. They can't disappear. Is there somewhere? And he was like, oh, I've got a fridge actually in this under this reception desk. That's the perfect place. I was like, that's amazing. And I went off to dinner, and I came back. No, I went and sat in the foyer for 5 minutes. I sat in the foyer, and this man came over, Jorge, shout out to Jorge. And he was like, I've just carried a fridge up to your room. And he didn't need to do that. I felt so comfortable with the solution that we'd found. And he'd just gone and found a fridge and from another room and like put it in my room. And that comfort of knowing that you are in arm's reach, you don't have to remember your supplies in the morning when you're leaving at 5 a.m. on the bus and your insulin's in that reception fridge, and actually there's no non-reception because it's 5 a.m. Like, it just takes those extra layers away. And that really sticks in my mind, that one. But there was quite a lot like that. I think, traveling, it's so cliche, like how much it teaches you about yourself, etc., etc. But there's an incredible amount of incredibly kind humans out there.
I've met so many great, helpful, kind, compassionate people during these travels, all these new characters in my life that I can go visit if I want to, in all these countries I've went to. And just time and time again, people have stepped up in moments where I'm not able to. And it's given me a lot of hope for the world. And the little things that are so much more important than these things that we can't control. Definitely. And it keeps me going. I think another important aspect of traveling with others, and even just with yourself, is pacing. It's something that I think that I've learned a lot in the last few years with diabetes, with long COVID, understanding my limits and being okay with them, and being transparent and communicative with people about them. How did you manage your pacing or communicate it to others and yourself during your travels?
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think that's been a bit of a journey.
It's a hell of a journey.
So life in London as a 25-year-old, whatever, working in media, like the pace was high. And as I mentioned earlier, like I've thrived with that environment, or presumed I did. And I'd be bouncing from here, there and everywhere, going to this thing. And that's London life for a lot of people. And just like, you know, somehow remembering my prescription at the last minute along the way, or there's some tired old hypo snack in the bottom of that bag somewhere. Like I would always be quite thoughtful and organized, but it was kind of my version of it. Like there's haphazard in it, which is type 1 diabetes. You can't control everything at all. I think throughout my type 1 diabetes life, just becoming much more conscious of the boundaries I need to set, not only for myself, but to those around me. It's something that has come with age and wisdom, and I guess just getting quite tired. But I think going freelance, I went freelance age 30, and I had no need to, other than I had more I wanted to experience, more I wanted to do, and the travel was in the back of my head. And so many people questioned that. And I do think there's something in the back of my mind that was maybe about the autonomy over my health, and that I could take time in the morning if I'd had a bad night of hypos and work on my own time or work in my own location. This was pre-COVID, so, you know, working at home wasn't so much of a thing. And I've been able to build this life that really does give me the flexibility to look after my health and pace myself. But I think from going freelance and slowing down and then stepping away from London, I actually realized how good it was to say no and how important it was to say no. But I was very confronted with it on remote year. It was so stark because people would be able to go out and have like 4 hours of sleep and then do a full day of work and then go off on the next adventure. And I'd be at the desk like broken, not from like having a big party night, but just from the lack of sleep.
It's a lot for anyone.
Yeah.
Like it is, you're going from place to place. There's excursions every week. People want to go out. You're only there for a month. So you're like, I want to take full advantage of this. But what I said earlier, it's like, no, this is just your life now.
Yeah.
And you need to be just as respectful to yourself and your body as you would if you were in your home country.
100%.
Because you're living month to month in these places for 4 months. If you're sick, you're sick. You have to listen to your body.
Yeah.
The FOMO is real, but you just have to get over it. And be like, you can't be there for everything. No one can.
Everything. You cannot do everything. And actually, just talking about type 1 diabetes in general and making room for it, which was a big thing that happened at a certain point in my life of like bringing it in, starting a blog to be able to try and understand what it meant to be someone who wanted to live a life full of fun stuff, but not sacrifice my health because I had a diagnosis of background retinopathy and I was terrified and I was only 22. And I was just starting that career and life looked really exciting. And I'd moved to a new city in the north of England and was roaming around with this microphone, getting all these stories. And suddenly that was actually under threat. And I think from then I started to learn like no one can do everything. Like you have to accept responsibility for your health. And for us, that means maybe a bit more than other people. But I don't think it's particularly different. I remember at the beginning of remote year, the community leader having this conversation about jobs because a lot of people get distracted by, we're here on this adventure, we want to do everything. And actually the job is what allows you to keep going, to keep traveling because you need the income to keep going. So the job is what facilitates the adventure. It's not that everything goes out the window. And I kind of viewed type 1 diabetes like that. I'd come to a point where I really had tuned into my body and my needs and my limits. And I'm someone, as I said, like I will push and I will try things and I will like see how this goes. And I think going into it at the age that I did, I probably had a better understanding of when to say no and feel okay about that. Because there was certainly a time in my life where I would not say no. If something fun was happening, I wanted to be in it. Yeah. But health conditions, I think it's about making decisions in the moment that will benefit your quality of life overall.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not in a year from now, you're not going to be like, oh, I didn't go out that one night on that Friday till 4 a.m. I regret my life. No, you valued your body and your feelings and you took care of yourself and that's so responsible of you. Do what you need to do to take care of yourself the way you would want to take care of a friend.
100%. Yeah. And I think a lot of people with type 1 diabetes can resonate that sometimes you are in a bit of a fight with yourself, with your body. It's failing you for XYZ reason. And that I think is where that period in my 20s where I was like, it's fine, don't worry about it, it's nothing, this thing, came from because I wanted to prove that I could still do everything. But actually, and I think I've felt like if I said no because of my type 1 diabetes, I was failing or, it meant that diabetes was winning. But actually, once I did start to figure this out and how empowering it was to respect my body and work with it, and actually that allowed me to do more over a longer period of time, that completely flipped the narrative. This is an empowering choice I'm making for myself to be my healthiest, brightest self. So the things I do say yes to, I can do with 100% of my whole self. And diabetes will still be like making noise in the background, chattering away, but to a lesser extent. And it was a complete reversal of what I thought, which was if I give in to type 1 diabetes, I've lost. I'm not living life properly or fully, and it's not the case at all. Yeah.
I'm just noticing, look at my number.
Oh, wow.
So I'm high.
Hey.
So before, I have a sugar pixel behind us, and before the recording I was like 79 and steady, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to be that low. Let me have some orange juice. I guess I ate too much. Oh no, I had some granola too. That always messes me up. So right now I'm 196 and it says I'm going up, but I think that's gonna level off soon. But
these are the realities.
This how cool is that? And we were gonna have both of our glucose levels on there, but we couldn't get it to work. But you can have two people's levels on there. So
that's so cool.
Sugar Pixel.
Yeah, the last time I looked at that, I think it was like 79, wasn't it? I heard you clicking away there.
Yeah, I'm clicking. I hear the clicks.
And that's obviously why. Wow, cool.
Okay, 2 final questions.
Yeah.
The first one, and I'm going to answer this too. What is one thing during your travels that you learned about yourself?
Wow.
And if you need a second, I can go. But
yeah, you go first. I'm going to think on this because there's so many.
Yeah.
So many.
So mine is that I don't miss my stuff.
Yes, that's a really good one.
I put all of my stuff in storage. I have my big suitcase here, my carry-on, and my backpack. And I'm happy with my light and my microphone and my phone and my production iPhone and my laptop and my little travel mics and the clothes I have here.
Yeah.
That's all I really need.
Yeah, it's true.
I have all of this smart home tech and this. I do miss my beautiful OLED TV, which I don't have, but like I'm not traveling with that. But like I really don't miss anything.
Yeah.
And I'm paying $300 a month to store all this stuff I don't miss because I'll one day settle down and put it all in a place, maybe, unless I move outside the country and I'm like, how do I get my stuff there? Yeah. Anyway, that's been my biggest lesson, and I want to become more of a minimalist. And I think that once I get back to the States and I can go through all my stuff, I can start selling things that I just am like, I really don't miss this. I don't need it. So that's what I've learned about myself in my travel so far.
Someone told me while I was traveling long term, if you can pack for 2 weeks, you're set. So if you have everything you need for 2 weeks, you basically can roll that indefinitely. And yeah, you may not have as many choices of the cute outfits, but you just make it work. But yeah, you're so right.
Or go shopping.
Yeah, or buy new things. Right. Yeah. I went back home a couple of times before I landed in Spain, and unpacking those boxes, those storage boxes, it was like buying new clothes because it was stuff I'd forgotten I had. So that was quite fun. Yeah. I was like refinding all these clothes, but I was exactly the same. Yeah, even my apartment now, I'd say, has a lot less stuff in it due to the travel than it would before. I think for me, it's not really a lesson, it's more of like an emphasizing that you can be in paradise, but it's about connections, it's about people, it's about like shared experience and being truly yourself in those moments. And I think there's something about shedding all your stuff that does make you step into who you are. And again, it's such a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. Like travel does do that to you. It strips you bare. It takes away all your comforts. It really asks you to present yourself over and over again. So you're kind of like deciding who you are to that new person that you've just met. Like, what are you choosing to say about yourself? And I think we get to a certain point in life in general where that happens less and less because you have your friends, you have your family, you have your unit. And the people I met made the experiences. The solo travel was really rewarding in a very different way, but sharing those wild experiences with those people at that moment, like, and meeting the people from each country and finding out about their lives, sharing the simplest plate of food with someone who has like put their love and care into that, and having a conversation through gestures, through like hand signals if you've got a language barrier. Those are some of my favorite moments, and they're all really simple. And yeah, that's just a thing that I would endlessly urge people, type 1 diabetes or not, to go and seek out in whatever way you can. Yeah.
My last question, and I'll answer it first to give you a little time. Okay. But it's what lesson about diabetes have you learned, or did you learn through all of those travels? Mine would be, especially when it comes to adventures and hikes, that bring low snacks and then bring more low snacks and then bring more low snacks and bring your glucagon, because there were multiple hikes so far, 2, that I didn't have enough. The first one, I'll give that to me. I thought I had enough. The second time, like, I shouldn't have done, like, that shouldn't have happened again. Mm-hmm. And I had to rely on people to give me snacks again, which I don't want to do. I don't want to rely on people. Like, I mean, I'm glad they're there, but you shouldn't expect that other people are going to come rescue you. You should always be there for yourself. And low snacks, just you got to have a lot.
Yeah.
And especially when you're in these, high intensity things.
So I'll tag on to your one then to preface the low snacks, like the one catastrophic or close to catastrophic hike that I had was because I set off with too much insulin on board, and it was just, I was going to say an uphill struggle from there. The hike was the least of the problems. It was also the hardest hike I've ever done, but I was climbing such a mountain in my head because I'd set off with too much insulin on board. So taking that bit away and like thinking about my breakfast a bit more carefully, or not ramming in some insulin because it was a correction dose that I'd taken that kind of sent me then for the rest of the day as we were climbing this volcano.
Where were you?
Guatemala.
Okay.
Yeah. Just Guatemala, guys.
Yeah.
So like bringing down the insulin on board pre-activity, I think, is the key. And that's key for me. I'm a runner. And if I go out with any kind of more than 0.5 units in my system, it's like that run is going to be very short because down it will go.
Yeah.
So there we go.
Great. Well, Jen, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. I learned a lot about things that I should get ready for. It's also just cool to hear from someone who's been through what I'm currently experiencing. And I think if we can do it, you can do it.
It's
just
possible.
Preparation.
Yes.
Like, do what you got to do. Pack everything you need. Pack more. Bring your low snacks. Yeah, so this was awesome.
It was great. Can I add a little point on that?
Yes.
So with the preparation and the packing, I get a lot of questions about that. And I actually feel way more kind of equipped when I'm traveling because I've thought so much about what I need, and I've got backup supplies on backup supplies. I've got injections, I've got glucose meters. Whereas if I'm just hopping out for the day, I don't tend to take all that with me, and I still get caught off guard no matter if I'm 2 miles from home or 2,000 miles from home. And actually with travel, because you consciously think about what you're packing so much, things will go wrong. But from my experience, at least, I've always had generally what I've needed because you're packing for travel. So
That's
just
great.
to reassure people.
Yeah, if you want access to all of my travel resources, there's a link in the show notes. You could just sign up for that and you'll get it sent to you with, all of the things that I like to pack, my other conversation with my diabetes educator, and some other things to prep. So go check that out. I also have a travel Q&A down there as well. Our links to socials are in there as well, so you can find both of us. And of course, you'll also want to check out our podcast episode on Jen's podcast. She interviewed me over there.
So head to Type 1 There's an amazing episode with Justin where I dig into basically your life story, no?
Yep, and we also did a video on your YouTube channel where I talk about all of my go-to travel accessories.
Check out the YouTube video there, and all the links will be below, won't they, Justin?
Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.